I can see a panel that is waiting with bated breath to get started. Listen, this is, as all of these are, but this is a serious, serious topic. We're going to talk now about the CCAD workforce and how do you sustain that? What do you do with it? Which, you know, as you look today, there's a lot of issues with all of this. So we've asked General Les Eisner to take this panel on, and I will let him introduce his panel members and kick it off. Les, it's yours.
Ready? Thanks, Steve. Again, thanks, General Muntz, Quad A, for setting up this very important panel. This may not be the sexiest topic or subject, workforce development, but I would arguably, it's the most critical because it's the people in the workforce that drive sustainment, reliability, and supporting the warfighter. Let me give you a little quick background for myself, and then I'll introduce the panel. Retired Army aviator, for those who don't know me. I now work in aerospace, predictive analytics, and cyber in the academic environment. And so I deal with commercial side, the defense side with Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Grumman and other folks, small, medium, and large business area. So the workforce development panel is something that I deal with on a regular, recurring basis, so it's pretty near and dear to me. So with that, I'll let the rest of the panel introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Fligge. I'm the Director of Resource Management at Corpus Christi Army Depot.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Schumacher. I'm the Marketing Coordinator for the Transition Assistance Program at Fort Hood, Texas.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Corris, Dean of Workforce Programs and Corporate Services at Del Mar College here in Corpus Christi.
Hi, I'm Amy Kitty Villarreal. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Workforce Solutions at the Coastal Bend.
I am Joe Guzman. I'm the Director of South Texas Military Facilities Task Force.
Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Coberly, Texas A&M Corpus Christi Professor of Military Science in the ROTC program.
Ooh. Where's Crosby? He saw me doing my PowerPoint slides, and he's convinced I couldn't do PowerPoint slides. So Steve, you know my witness, I can't do PowerPoint. The topic of the panel discussion today is securing the CCAD workforce. I wish Colonel Atkins was back in here because that was near and dear to her when we had a conversation in the hall. You want to wait? Okay. So we're waiting. I'll get on my soapbox speech here. One of the things that I believe Steve Munt's done in the Quad A panel, we've had several discussions about this, is the value of Quad A is really rich and touches a lot of tenets of the Army Aviation enterprise. But one of the things Steve's trying to drive is some outside-the-box thoughts on how do we solve today and tomorrow's problems in the Army Aviation enterprise system. And in that vein, how we tackle today and tomorrow's workforce problems is exactly one of those required outside-the-box thought processes. Whether we like it or not, we now live in a software-defined world. Digitizing and automation of the manufacturing process. And CCAD and its critical function in the strategic aviation enterprise is part of that environment. And so as we go forward, how do we shape the workforce to sustain the capability? My first introduction as a young, skinny Army aviator when I was in the Honey Badger and Task Force 160th is when, because of urgency and need, we modified Blackhawks that had only been in the Army for literally months, and they did it in fast order, and that's a testament historically and currently to the depth of the CCAD capability. But the challenges that we face in the future in the workforce, changing technologies, changing threats, demands us to think outside the box. And so hopefully the panel will touch on some of those facets today. Identified in the, this is a topic of discussion in industry. These are the 6 challenges facing maintenance, repair, and overhaul in the aerospace industry. Workforce quality and training gaps. Could be how do we fuse advanced composite materials in a welding scenario. Could be cyber-related stuff. Cyber is the second one. Everything we do nowadays, whether it's a 5-axis milling machine or an inventory log, is touched by cyber in the cyber domain. The lack of research and development, investment in maintenance and repair and overhaul is less than 5% of MRO dollars are spent in R&D. And so we still maintain and repair and overhaul stuff in the 20th century manner, and there may be more efficient ways to do that as we start looking at metadata and bringing that data forward to the strategic enterprise environment. The digitizing and the manufacturing of manufacturing 4.0. Right now across the United States in the advanced manufacturing and MRO world, there are about, depending on what statistic you look at, between 1.5 and 2 million workers short. Sustainability. Sustainability is defined in the supply chain logistics system, sustainability in the technology. How do we sustain the current workforce environment to meet the needs of the warfighter? Commoditizing services. Jeff Bezos, who obviously has been pretty successful as he started Amazon, recently at a graduation speech says, if you're in business school, get your degree, don't listen to anything they've told you, the world has changed. And so how do we have to look at new business practices in the workforce to, again, support the warfighter and the nation at war? Here's the competition in the landscape for Colonel Atkins and the folks at CCAD. Right now there's a 40% shortage in maintenance, repair, and overhaul personnel around the world, and specifically in the United States. Commercial aviation is growing at an annualized over the next 10 years about 5.2% in growth. Those people that you want to come work for CCAD or their industry partners may go elsewhere to work. The aerospace industry in the United States is shifting. 25% of the aerospace industry now resides in the southeastern United States, between Mobile, Alabama, and Greensboro, North Carolina, with Boeing in the middle at Charleston, Gulfstream Jet, and that affects the military's capability to draw those workforce folks that we need critically. Inadequate training to meet current needs. I'm an old dog. You need new dogs with cyber skills that have the ability to do data analytics and metadata while they're milling or resurfacing a gear cluster. Emerging technologies, the digital thread. Again, we live in a software-defined world nowadays. As we move forward for future vertical lift or some of the commercial variants or some of the unmanned systems, the airplane and the aircraft really operates at a node of the network. And so how do you bring all that technology to bear in that workforce beyond just the normal maintenance, repair, and overhaul? Long lead times to develop the skilled workforce. Colonel Atkins and I were talking at a break earlier today. You really have to start growing this workforce, particularly in the high-tech skill areas in the K-12 environment, and that's why it's critical to have a partnership with our industry, government, and academic partners. The ecosystem, and I'm going to go through this real quickly, and I'm going to let my distinguished panel throw their important remarks in. You got a legacy fleet. You have an emerging fleet. In the not too distant future, when we field future vertical lift, which is going to be predominantly a composite material, and you're going to have embedded sensors and composite materials that will give you metadata and explain to you how to repair and overhaul that component, but at the same time, we're going to have a 50-year-old Black Hawk, and how do we overhaul that? And so how do you have a diverse workforce to be able to maintain what we currently have in a legacy fleet and as we go forward in our manned and unmanned systems? The digital thread. How do you take tactical data, and the Army struggle with this, and get it to the strategic enablers at the depot level, and then vice versa? Data analytics. You need people that can analyze data that can increase the efficiency of the maintenance, repair, and overhaul kind of capability. There's new things on front, machine learning, artificial intelligence. There's now the capability of robots to do better inspections on advanced composite materials than humans can do. If they get down to the very, very fine micron level. Is that what we want to do? Well, that doesn't mean we need less people. That means we need people of a different kind of caliber. Workload. How does this shift in workload? With the surge capability needed for the support the nation and the nation's warfighters, and how do we deal with workforce ups and downs? Age demographics. Again, Colonel Atkins and I were talking, I think you said the average age of your workforce is 55 years old. We have to proactively be ready. We're ready for those 55-year-old baby boomers to leave, and how do we recruit the next guys and gals to be able to sustain that? And part of that age demographic gap concern to be proactive is knowledge management. How do you take this knowledge and skills and aptitudes of a 55-year-old as she or he walks out the door and impart that to a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old? New technologies. The Yang side of it, advanced training needs, advanced composites, cyber, digital twins. Future vertical lift will, with high probability, have a digital twin. And so configuration management, as we've talked in many, many years, back when General Riggs was flying Alpha model CH-47s, the new future vertical lift will have a digital twin, and configuration management will be done in the virtual or digital environment. And that will affect your overhaul requirements. Advanced analytics, enterprise-wide digital integration to the CCAD workforce. Again, tactical, technical, all the way to strategic. I'm too quick on this thing. What are the solutions? A teaming approach with industry, academia, and government, tech schools, K-12 schools, academic 4-year conferred degree schools, your other government providers, Navy, Air Force, whatever, industry providers. Some of the skill sets and training are needed reside in our industry partners. Think outside the box. Recruiting and learning must be a priority. Embrace and adapt an agile workforce. Again, demographics, as the 55-year-olds retire and go to bigger and better things. Proactively prepare for demographic shifts. Millennials and younger may wake up one day and go, you know, Corpus Christi is a wonderful place, but I think I want to go to California, or I want to go to Oklahoma. And you have to prepare for that shift to maintain capability. Evolve organizational culture and train the leaders in positions as well as the worker force on emerging technologies, on gap analysis, on data analytics. Don't do things the same way. If you ask a 20th century question of 21st century data, you'll get a 20th century answer. We have to ask 21st century questions as leaders of our workforce and our capabilities in order to be able to leverage and optimize the CCAD workforce.
So we'll highlight just a little bit on capitalize on General Eisner's speech a little bit. Hopefully this will work. Where's it at? We have some slides.
Let's have some slides from
There we go. So you see the composition of our workforce. No surprise to anybody, about 75% of our employees are all artisans. We have about some 20 to 25 different career programs, the volume and diversity that each one has to have a separate plan moving forward in its evolution and growth and or decline based on workload that comes to the depot. They all have specific challenges. Say this fast. As General Eisner alluded to, our workforce generally is greater than 50 years old. You see the average service population of our team is less than 15 years of civil service. What that kind of indicates to me is we have a second career, second generation workforce at the depot. A lot of folks coming in. About half of our workforce is veterans. So it does indicate they're coming back into the depot from the military workforce to be productive once again. You know, the millennials, 2% of our population is less than 30 years old. We know we have growth opportunities that we need to attract that new talent into the depot, those folks that are smart in cyber, smart in information technology that we're going to need to evolve in the future. So we looked at our retirement eligibility, going back to the first chart. Here was the real surprise. A lot of our folks trends in critical skills where we see the biggest gaps are not in the volume skills. They're really in the high density, low demand kind of stuff that says nurses, 1 of 1 is retired. That affects your occupational health clinic. Construction control technical, electronics engineering, 1 of 1. That person retires, you got a single point of failure. General supply, chemical engineering, 2 of 3 are eligible for retirement today. We lose those folks. There goes your AIB capability, your accident investigation capability, things that we have to evolve and things we have to work forward to. Physical science technicians, as we go into additive manufacturing, all the sciences that go along with that. Once again, 2 of the 4 of those folks may be legacy technology, but they have to be replaced, and those new skills need to come to the depot. So where are we headed? In the short term, one of the commander's first priorities that she laid on us, and with a very aggressive timeline, is to develop our human capital plan and our strategy. We do have some short-term needs in leadership theory and development for our supervisors, production skills, electroplaters, sandblasters, supply chain and inventory management, our enterprise resource planning system, although it's about 10 years old today. My thoughts are we do not know enough about the system in and of itself to evolve it to its next capability and next evolution. Business skills for our management analysts, statements of work for contract specialists, once again, enterprise resource planning that we need to evolve the depot from inventory management, supply chain management, in concert with our partners. Our strategy as it evolves in the next 7 to 10 years will be based on a lot of factors: workload, technology, facility management and processes, support functions, and of course our partners in the local climate and resources here in Corpus Christi. We don't believe we can do it alone. We do believe, as the commander has indicated multiple times, that we have to engage those partners in the local community, to include local government. How do we attract the talent to the coastal bend in Corpus Christi? How do we evolve the talent from grade school to middle school, high school, and then on to colleges, and our partnerships with Del Mar and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Our opportunities for training and development partnerships as we look near-term and long-term. General Iser mentioned a couple of them: advanced composite repair capability, additive manufacturing, robotics, industrial processes and engineers. But let's not leave out the business skills that we'll need in the depot also for inventory and supply chain management, data analytics, enterprise resource planning, understanding the system, and cost and managerial accounting. And with that, I'll pass the baton.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't have any slides because this is going to be pretty easy. I represent the TAP program, which is Transition Assistance. All of the services right now have the TAP program, which means before a service member leaves active duty, they get to go through a whole list of things with us. There's 5-day workshops that are mandated to get them ready to prepare for their transition. We're the resource, we're not a job search agency. However, because of our mandate by law, and we are mandated by law, there's a lot of things that we do. I'm from Fort Hood. We have the highest transition tempo in the entire Army. About 9% of the entire Army is based at Fort Hood, Texas. So we have a very large presence up there. We have about 37,000 soldiers. We have a very large air combat brigade up there. Those guys just came back off a 9-month rotation to Germany, and a lot of those are getting ready to get out. So we're going to see a lot of transition. I know Israel Talametis has been up here. He's been up here for our large job fairs at Fort Hood. So because we have a large aviation presence, we have a lot to offer in that respect. We're just one installation. I mean, most of our larger Army installations, just like Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard even, because people forget about the Coast Guard, they have a large air presence as well. There's a lot of talent out there. We have a lot of people that do not want to stay that 25 years. It's getting tougher to make it to 20, 25 years nowadays, so a lot don't opt to retire. They opt to get out a little bit sooner. I would say the average that we see is probably about 5 to 6 years, and most of the first-termers are going to go ahead and get out, or maybe if they've extended or re-enlisted. So there's a lot of talent out there in the pipeline. We just need to make sure that we can connect to get them to you and vice versa. Depot opportunities are great. I think a lot of soldiers, especially young soldiers, because they never have exposure to the depot, and one of the things I found interesting on the earlier panels were the fact that you have cross-level training where you can bring people out of active and National Guard units, send them to a depot for up to 6 weeks or whatever the time frame is. Trust me, that carries a powerful message back to those other folks that don't have that opportunity. And to work in a depot, that may change your whole aspect toward working in aviation or continuing on long term. So that's one of the things I want to focus on. The other thing is pilots are bleeding out in the Army. We all know that. A lot of them are going to the airline industry, and I realize CCAD's main objective is not the pilots themselves, which leaves the maintenance side of the house. Unfortunately, and this has been a long-standing problem within the Army and the Department of Defense, is the credentialing piece of it. I don't know what the rate is that CCAD looks for A&P mechanics. I do know that, you know, the Department of Defense, Department of Army has talked this issue to death for at least the last 20 years on how are we going to get these folks credentialed, because a lot of them, it's not that they're non-employable when they leave the military and go into the civilian airline industry, let's say, but they're underemployable in that if they don't have their AP license, they're going to be offered a job carrying somebody else's toolbox for them. Now at CCAD, we know that's not a problem. They can go in the various opportunities there. So we have to find a way to better communicate that to the service members that, look, even if you don't have your A&P license, you are still very employable, especially for these large depots and Corpus Christi. You want to stay in Texas? Texas is a great state to stay in. I mean, it offers so much to veterans that there's no downfall to staying here for that opportunity. And I guess you get to live on the beach as well. Cyber. One of the things General Eisler brought up is cyber is a big push right now. Unfortunately, with the Army, we just stood up the Cyber Command about 2.5 years ago. Most of those incurred a 4-year enlistment. The sergeants that were offered, because you had to be at least an E5 to transition over to the 17 series, most of those picked up at least a 4-year commitment. So not too many people are going to be touching the cyber until at least next year, maybe 2020. So those folks will become available. Fortunately, though, on the upside, the Army got a lot smarter. We have an extremely large theater tactical information technology command at Fort Hood, which actually has done a lot of cyber training for those 25 series MOSs, those IT specialists, whether they're network defenders, whatever they happen to be. They have dumped a lot of training on the cyber aspect for those folks. So even if they're not cyber defenders, they may be able to bring a lot to the table for Corpus and those other folks that are looking for them. The other thing I did want to mention, and this is something that's always a kind of a forgotten issue, I think, and that's 55% of all of Fort Hood's population, that 37,000 soldiers, is married. So we have a large spouse population, and the problem for us, especially in the TAP program, is we don't know what their backgrounds are. I can tell you this, 6,000 of the people on Fort Hood are commissioned officers. That's lieutenants through general officers. 55% of them approximately are married. And if they met in college, that means their spouse or their significant other has a degree as well. So there's a lot of talent out there that just seems to get untapped. There's not a really good mechanism to tap into the spouse side of the house, and that's another problem within the Department of Defense. And that's existed as long as probably the military's been around. So nobody's ever broken the code on that, but we have a lot of those folks too. So I would say if you want to recruit and you want to push the message out, make sure you include some sort of message for those spouses and maybe even their dependent children. You know, we have a lot of folks, I know, and I mentioned this to General Munn earlier, when I retired in '96, he was my battalion commander on Fort Hood, so we go back a ways. The talent's there, folks. The talent's there, the drive is there. Service members are not the same as when I enlisted in the Army back in 1975. The quality and the caliber of these young men and women right now is incredible. So definitely we're on the right track. We just need to make sure we're really actively going after it. The other message I want to leave this with, and before I turn it over to Dan, is recruiting from the military is not like recruiting from the civilian population. And too many recruiters, especially in corporate America and the private sector, make that mistake. If you go to the workforce here in Texas, it's a stagnant pool of talent. They're there. They've just moved in. They're living there. Maybe they're in between jobs. With the military, it is a constant outflow. We transition 9,000 to 12,000 active a year, and we're one of two mobilization platforms in the Army. So we see another 4,000 to 8,000 Reserve and National Guard go through Fort Hood as well every year. But that means 9,000 to 12,000 are getting out every year, but they're not all getting out at once. They're not all available at once. And I gave you the example of the 1st Air Combat Brigade being gone for 9 months. Who are you going to talk to? They're not here to talk to. They're not here to go to career fairs. They're not here. They're not reading their Facebook in real time as much as they would here if they're here in the States. So you got to figure a way to make that a pipeline operation. And I know Actually, I believe General Eisner said that. He mentioned the pipeline talent. That's exactly what it is. The military is a pipeline operation. You have to commit to coming in every other month, at least once a quarter, communicating that message, because if you talk to everybody that gets out of the service, for instance, at Fort Hood today, you just missed 10,000 people. So it's got to be a message you're willing to repeat over and over again, and we have a lot of ways to get that message out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, I want to say thanks to Quad A, to Colonel Atkins, to Bob Stratton. Where's Bob at? And then to my ISD invitees. Question is, if you're an ISD invitee, would you please raise your hand? Very good. Bob, I told them they were going to get a ride in a CH-46 if they came, so I hope you got it ready and tooled up, ready to go.
We don't have one here.
Well, we just used the word pipeline, but in fact, what we're working on is pathways. And in fact, what I like to do is share some trends that we have here in the coastal bend or in the city of Corpus Christi. In fact, show of hands, how many people are here in Texas? Raise your hand. They're from Texas? Okay. Now put them down. How many people here want to be in Texas? They're from somewhere else. Okay, come on, raise them high. We're proud in Texas. Now, here in South Texas, these are some of the trends that we're going through. Right now, we're in the middle of an energy renaissance. We're in the middle of about $50 to $55 billion worth of economic growth in the coastal bend. And the question is, what are we doing when it comes to meeting the workforce demands? And in fact, here about 5 years ago, we saw the bow wave coming. And in 2014 and 2016, at least Del Mar College, we're right in the middle of $297 million worth of bond projects trying to get in front of the bow wave. Dr. Escamilla, who's our president, he wanted probably $800 million, but he could get $300 million out of the voters, and that's as good as we can do for right now, trying to keep up. In fact, last year we were voted in Corpus Christi one of 6 cities in the U.S. that's experiencing exponential growth. Other cities include Nashville, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Austin for technology, Houston, and Corpus Christi. Us in Houston have something in common. We're both in the chemical or petrochemical industry. We both share the same demands when it comes to industries. However, they have 3 million people and we have 300,000. And in fact, our numbers are similar. We only need somewhere around 50,000 skilled workers in the next 10 years because we're all in that same demographic. Everyone's 50 and older. And then I look at the workforce panel. Yeah. We're all 50 and older, and we're all going to retire in the next 10 years.
Not me. Not me.
Okay, maybe there's one, except for Joe either.
Yeah, me and Joe.
So we're all in the same boat, and we're all trying to figure out how are we going to do this. In fact, what we ended up doing is whenever we got put in this category, they said, what are you doing to keep up with the workforce? So we came up with, we've already had many strategic initiatives. So one of them that we put together along with all of our partners was a Corpus Christi Strategic Educational Plan. In fact, for those people in Texas, this is only the Texans, if you know about the Texas 60-30 program, raise your hand. If you don't know about it, raise your hand. Let's be honest. So Texas aligned with the K-12 system that's called the Texas Education Agency, the college and community college and university systems called the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Boards, and then the Texas Workforce Commission. That's the folks sitting to my right, kind of. And in fact, what we tried to do is put together a plan that by the year 2030, 60% of all Texans are going to have a post-secondary education. Not a 4-year degree, but some type of certification saying that you have a skill set that's going to contribute to the state of Texas. And the beauty is, did you know there's 1,000 people coming to Texas every single day? Did you know that? In fact, did you know that half of them are getting here through their mother's wombs? Yes. In fact, that's how fast Texas is growing with the population, and we are a very young state. So putting this initiative together to reach these demographics is a state initiative. In fact, along with the state initiative, along with the city initiative, comes the initiatives when we come together with our other strategic partners, CCAD being one of those strategic partners. We've already met with the Colonel and asked, Colonel, how can we best support the depot? At the same time, and these are some other demographics out there, the Corpus Christi Educational Development Corporation, their 3 highest strategic plans are petrochemical, advanced manufacturing, and aviation. So in fact, locally, the TWC priorities include petrochemical, construction, business, healthcare, public safety, information technology, no surprise, information technology. Education is a huge one because no one wants to teach anymore because of the challenges in school districts. Where's my ISD partners? Can I get an amen? Thank you for what you do, and thank you for staying in that job. Do not quit. And finally, all the other industries out there that includes aviation and auto mechanics. They're very small, and the question is we're trying to grow those. So within the strategic educational plan that we have includes the Texas 60/30 plan, and in fact, the 3 pieces within the plan is number 1, creating an awareness within our own community of the demanded jobs that we have, that you do not have to go to a 4-year university right now, that you can get a very good job and you can have a good life and a good career with a 2-year degree or with simply sometimes a certificate. Another piece in this is driving all of our decisions based on money because we have a lot more demands than we have resources, and the question is making those decisions based on data. One of our biggest data partners is our 4-year institutions. And finally, the third one comes back full circle where it comes to strategic partnerships. If we're all working together lockstep, the likelihood goes up that either we're going to succeed together or we're going to fail together. But either way, we're going to be together. In fact, that's our approach, especially at the community college, is community college means we're part of the community and we're here to support the community in their endeavors. And we have a firm belief that 80% of the jobs that are out there are the ones that are technical in nature and they do not need a 4-year degree, but at the exact same time that we can also produce those, we call them pathways, to 4-year institutions. And that's another discussion that we have a Texas-wide consortium that leads AAS degrees, which used to be terminal degrees, into BAS degrees. That's a Bachelor of Applied Science. So you do your artisan or technical skills on the bottom, and then when you're ready to go from the cement to the carpet, when you're ready to move up, you put business and leadership on top. That way everybody, and especially the parents, know that their sons and daughters have an opportunity to get a 4-year degree. It just might take a little bit longer than going through a 4-year institution. However, the need for our jobs are more technical in our arena here than they are administrative. There's still a lot of jobs out there, but we're trying to produce technical graduates. In fact, in the middle of the ISD partnerships, we look very closely at the emerging workforce, and again, they're the ones in the classroom right now. In fact, the existing workforce, and in fact, we're very proud to have partnered with CCAD over the last 5 years. I lose track of the number, but I think we've trained somewhere around 16 or 17,000 hours inside of CCAD helping their existing workforce. But in fact, there's one other demographic that we're always after, and it supports the 60/30 program, is the existing workforce that's outside of the gate. And in fact, here's a great statistic. What is the #1 largest employer in the U.S.? Any guess? General? Government. Government agencies employ more people than any other agency. #2, guesses? You eat there every night. Excuse me, we eat there every Friday night. I can't afford to eat there every night. Food service is #2, and then #3 is retail. If we can get the transition of those young folks that are ready to move up and not out, and retrain them so that they move out of food service and retail into a technical area that they're producing more labor and products versus services, then the likelihood that we believe that our workforce will grow in our area. And finally, in the midst of trying to grow that workforce is making sure that our partnerships between us all are very tight. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to my partner, the Texas Work. I'll pass it on to my other partner who we work hand in hand with at the Texas Workforce Commission.
Yes, so I'm with Workforce Solutions of the Coastal Bend, which is one of 28 workforce boards in the state of Texas. So we are funded by the Texas Workforce Commission, which the funding comes from the Department of Labor, but we are independent in that we are a local nonprofit. Some boards are Council of Governments, those kind of things, but we locally here are a nonprofit organization that has 8 career centers across the 11 counties that we serve. I wanted to talk a little bit specifically to what was on the agenda today about how we can help CCAD build its workforce. And I know just a month and a half ago, I got to sit in a room with Colonel Atkins at the Mayor's Interagency and talk about our services and how we can plug in. We are currently plugged in with CCAD in that we provide meeting rooms when they are interviewing the talent that's coming in. We primarily are matching skilled talent that already exists in the labor force with the needs of local employers, so we do that every day. We serve about 4,300 employers throughout the year. That's about a quarter of our workforce locally. Of course, we are state and nationally out there with workintexas.com, so people can search for jobs across the internet from anywhere and look for the jobs that are available in our region. And so CCAD is connected with us through workintexas.com and usjobs.gov and post their jobs with us. And then those qualified candidates come in, interview with the HR staff with CCAD and put them in. That's the easiest and the cleanest of the connections. The second thing we do is take the unskilled workers, the unskilled labor that's here, talk to them about the jobs that are in our community. Dan mentioned the different industries that are priorities to us. As CCAD is one of our largest employers in the region, the jobs that are there and available to people are something that we really want to tout. So we tell that those people who may have been disconnected from the workforce, you know, our unemployment rate is currently 4.8%, which is a whole lot better than it's been for years. But when you talk to people, they say, well, that's not a real number. And it's not that it's not real, but there is only about 64% of our population that counts in the unemployment rate. So there's another 36% of our population that is of working age that is disconnected from the workforce. So the second part of what we do is bringing those people back into the fold, getting them reconnected with the services, with the programs that we have, teaching them about the jobs that we have here and how to get into those skilled training programs through our community partners at Del Mar College and Coastal Bend College, A&M Corpus Christi and A&M Kingsville, so that they can get into the workforce and become productive citizens in our community. So that's the second way. And the third, and the one that I love to talk about the most, is our work from pre-K all the way through post-secondary with our school districts and with even daycare centers about jobs that are in the region so that kids learn about the careers that are here and the opportunities at a very early age and realize that there is a lot of opportunity in the Coastal Bend region. And as Dan mentioned also, we have a need for 50,000 workers potentially. And if you actually look at the numbers and you look at the rate, what the unemployment numbers show currently is that we've got 12,000 unemployed people. Then you add 36% that are not in the labor force. But those are a little harder to get in. But when you look at that untapped source of kids coming in, that is where your bread and butter is. And to get them interested in the careers of the future and the technology that was mentioned and all the technology, that it's not just about becoming a videographer or a video game guy. You know, you're going to do really cool stuff and with CCAD and the work that's done here. I think that's really, really fun. And I'm really glad I get to do that every day, working with our partners. I know Dr. Rosebrock is here from CCISD. He and some of our other ISD partners are creating programs for intros to manufacturing, intro to technology on campus. They're building out programs so that kids at a very early age find out what that looks like in the workforce. Plus, with our on-the-job training programs, we're able to show kids over the summer, 6 to 8 weeks, they go on-site with employers and learn about jobs. CCAD was also just recently at our You Choose Career Expo, where we brought 1,500 kids from all 30 ISDs locally into the American Bank Center, and we were able to expose them to all kinds of different industry. We had 70 employers there, CCAD was one of them, and they're able to talk directly, not only with the employers, but with the training institutions that will get them the skilled certification or degree that will get them the job later. And even at that, we've had Exxon was there. One of the kids turned in a resume directly to the Exxon representative that was there. They were thrilled. And it also helps employers because they realize that kids are interested. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And so when they learn, when they're able to do career exploration and find out about the jobs that are there, they really get even more interested, and they start to look away from their phones and their apps and hopefully into their future. And so we also, military family, I know that was brought up, in supporting military veterans and their families. I wanted to tell you just a little bit. Of course, in the state of Texas, military veterans who walk into our offices have priority of service. They go to the front of the line with anything that we have, any programs, any openings. We have a 2-day vet hold, so any job postings that go into workintexas.com, veterans have 2 days to respond to those postings before the general public see them. But also military spouses, anyone who has been relocated as a military spouse can come into our career centers and be determined eligible for our dislocated worker program. As a military veteran who's been dislocated from their previous site, they can come in, they can get trained, and we can help them with job search also. And those are all free of charge. So that's another resource. Our TWC commissioner and chairman, Ruth Hughes, who's a local woman who is now our commissioner with TWC, she started Operation Welcome Home along with the Texas Veterans Commission and the Texas Veterans Leadership Program, which works with the TAPS program to let military veterans know all the opportunities that are available to them as they exit. And so all of these avenues are ways that we can really connect with CCAD and help grow that workforce locally. So with that, I'll pass it on to Joe.
Okay, since I'm the oldest guy in the panel, I was asked to give a little bit of synopsis on how CCAD was in the old days versus what it is today, as I know it. When I got out of the Army, I went to Del Mar College, and then I went to work in the depot in 1967. Luther Jones was my first commander. You can tell how that was back in 67. What's very prevalent now and then was the teamwork that CCAD shows every day that you go to work there, you went to work there. Back in that 67, 68 time frame, we had about 5,000 workers at the depot, and we were going through Vietnam. And everybody pitched in, did what they need to do. Soldiers would also work with us in the shops because they were training to go on the ship that we had off the coast of Vietnam. That ship, the aircraft would go in there to bring in components and minor repairs, and we'd send them out. We were producing about 500 engines a month, but they were just Band-Aid. They needed them in a hurry, so they were going out. Through that Vietnam War at that time, we also fought Hurricane Celia that came in very destructive in Corpus Christi. The depot was shut down for a couple weeks, but people still went in there and preserved the items that we had and continued to produce whatever we could produce. Teamwork was very, very much in place there like it is right now. When I retired from the depot in 1999, everything was getting modernized. Modernization did not take place in the depot until about the 80s. when the Army came up with the Force Modernization Program and developing the upgrade of the CH-47, the OH-58D, coming up with the Black Hawk and the Apache. So since I was a Force Modernization Officer at that time, I worked with the OEMs and the PMs, and at that time it was in St. Louis and ASCOM, and developing the technical data, the tools and equipment you were going to need to upgrade those aircraft. Technology then took place before we would even doing with the paper shop travelers in the shops. So very, very important to process those aircraft parts, but paperwork got lost because they attached them to a unit and then it got lost, so we had to develop new paperwork until we finally started getting the automated shop traveler system. And then it's what it is right now is super because it was improved year by year when we got new equipment and new programs. So that is the CCAD back then. Since I've known it, since I've been working with CCAD back since I retired, being in the military task force, I see the shops, take people in there. I see the new modern equipment we got in there, the new welding, the electron beam welding, also the system that we upgrade with metal spray. I mean, it's just fantastic. Those items are there. The water jet cutter, all the stuff that we never had before. You know, but we still survive. We had to do what we needed to do to get the stuff out. We were producing the aircraft. Back then was a Huey. The Huey was a mainstay at the depot at that time. We even worked on President Lyndon Johnson's Huey, his aircraft. We had it at the depot. That was CCAD 1. So all those things took place. And right now, when you have 2,000 less people than we had back then, you still, with all the new equipment you got and the new processes that you developed, the new process of the aircraft, the new stations you have in there, all of that has improved, and it's improved the process of the aircraft and the production of the aircraft that we do right now, because the Black Hawk is a lot different from a Huey. So a Huey, you could fix it up. T-53 engine back then in there, you take a rubber mallet and a ball peen hammer, and you could get it going, and it worked pretty good. But that is not the T-700. The T-700 was the difference between a clock and a wristwatch when you went into those aircraft. And I spent a lot of times in GE working with the development of the T-700 engine. So keep it up, young guys and gals that are there right now, because the technology that you got right now, use it wisely so you can train the other people. Don't be selfish. Train the people that come in there, because those are going to be the ones that are going to go in there. The average age, I guess, went down when I left there, but but right now it's still in the 50s. So the people leave, and unfortunately, they take their heads with them. And you gotta train your young people there, your fellow workers, and keep them there. So that's the new CCAD, and that's when I go to the Pentagon, I go to Congress, they always say you have a jewel at the Army Depot in Corpus Christi. And keep that jewel the way it is, because we need it. It's very, very important to our readiness program and also to supporting our troops on the field. That's it.
Okay, so it was said here a minute ago that everybody on the panel was over 50. That must have been an average, because I'm only 39. So, okay, so I'm from Texas A&M ROTC. What I want to do is just kind of give you an overview of what Cadet Command is doing. A lot of you are not from Texas, so you may not understand how it works. So I'll give you kind of that background, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we can support CCAD, although I think most of it's going to be more national. So just some numbers for you. 70% of the officers entering the Army come from ROTC. I think that's pretty typical. It's been that way for a while. What you may not know is there's just under 1,000 campuses that do ROTC. 32,000 is the number as of last month. Students in ROTC, 31% of those are STEM majors. That translates into about 5,500 lieutenants every year being graduated in May, August, and December. So that's the output that ROTC is handling every year across those 1,000 or so programs. Money, the Army is 15,000 of those are being provided some sort of merit-based scholarship, so about half. And then total amount of scholarship paid as of September was over $300 million for the year. So the students that ROTC is producing are getting a lot of support from Cadet Command and the Army to do their programs, and a number of those are STEM. So how does that translate to you, sort of in the industrial base? The Army's training not just the STEM majors, but everybody that goes through the program is getting a leadership training. So leadership, discipline, management techniques, cultural awareness, and problem solving. So we're going after adaptive leadership in ROTC. So what we produce on the backside of the university experience is someone who can think creatively, who can solve problems, and may not have your technical skills right away, but they have the ability to learn them quickly and then to employ those. So that's sort of the product that ROTC is producing. Now let's translate that into how does that sort of array across the Army. So they're producing that product for the National Guard, the Army Reserve, and the active force. So let's look at Corpus Christi. I sat in a meeting, maybe it was a briefing a few months ago. About 40% of the 12,500 students at Texas A&M Corpus Christi are first-generation college students. The vast majority, I don't know the number of students that we have in our program and on campus, are from Texas. So for CCAD, if these cadets go into the Army, if they go into the active force, I mean, we heard it here a minute ago, 4 to 6 years, many of them are coming back out with a lot of experience. I think CCAD's problem is how do I grab those that are here now that might be coming back to Corpus Christi in 4 to 6 years with experience that you probably will be able to draw on. How can I get them to look at CCAD, and how can I get them to, at the front end of college, pick degrees and programs that are going to be supportive of that, 4 to 6 years down the road. So it's sort of a strategic plan that I think you got to look at to make that happen. A typical ROTC program is probably a lot like ours. We have 130 students arrayed across all 4 years, 5 years in some cases. We commission, our mission is 15 officers per year. So we start at about 70 as a freshman, and then we whittle that down to where we are commissioning 15 a year. We have a nursing mission also. I saw that on a slide, but it was 101, so I don't know how we get after nurses at CCAD. But that's typical of an Army ROTC program in the 900 and some odd colleges across the country. Each program is not producing high numbers, but they're producing some pretty high quality things once they whittle that down. And they're people that want to be there, and they're interested in the curriculum, and they're interested in the leadership opportunities. So that's what I would offer you. I think we may have some opportunities between Texas A&M and CCAD. Just talking here a few minutes before we came up here with our engineering programs that we have, and maybe there's a way to link up and create some of that drive to either look at CCAD once they graduate if they end up in a reserve duty MOS or unit, or 4 to 6 years later as people decide to come back home and they're married and they have kids and they want to continue their federal service, or if there's industries out there that they could be interested in. I think we can start planting those seeds now, knowing that not everybody that joins the Army and the active force is going to do 20 years. In fact, most of them won't. So that's my spiel on Cadet Command and ROTC, and I can answer some of your questions. I've only been in the job for about 3-4 months, but I'll figure it out if you ask it. So, thank you.
We got people who want to ask a question out here? All right, I got people. This is good.
Yeah, this question's for Workforce Solutions. Rick Rincon, Corpus Christi Army Depot. So as we we've done a couple job fairs, and we've been partnering with some of the elementary schools. We've done stuff through K through 12. And at that point, they're not invested yet in selfless service, obviously. There's some questions that they have coming out of high school. It's more about salaries. One time I visited your site, and you had a tool. I don't know if it was a website, but you kind of asked the kids, what kind of car do you want to drive, what kind of house, and you plug it into this model, and it tells you need a job that makes X amount of dollars. Is that something specific to your area, or is it a site I can access?
Yeah, no, it's called Texas Reality Check, and
I did.
yeah, and it is a great tool. It really, really is, and we use it as much with adults as we do with kids, because I've used it too. But it is a really great tool, and it does. It models what kind of lifestyle do you want to live, and this is the kind of money you need to make. These are the occupations that you can make that in. And here are the schools in Texas that will get you trained in those occupations, and then it will link them to the jobs. So Texas Reality Check is what it's called, and yes, it is a great tool, and you can Google it and try it out. I encourage you, if you have young adults or grown adults who haven't found their way, it's a great tool. Thank you for that.
Thank you. My name's Tom Diaz de Leon. I'm a retired CCAD employee and currently working in the MRDEC engineering side of the house. I remember back in the old days in 1982, we had the apprenticeship program. In the engine apprenticeship program, which I was one of the apprentices, the program worked to the point that you put in 4 hours of academical training through our community college, and the other 4 hours you did hands-on. Eventually, at the end of 3 years, you would come out at the journeyman level. That was one of the programs. The other program that I was fortunate enough to assist was the A&P, Airframes and Power Plant certification, where you would come out as a certified in either power plant or airframes. So that was another program. The third program that was there in CCAD was a co-op program where the student at high school level would earn, I think, like 16 semester hours. Upon graduating from high school, will attend the community college and then would do 4 hours of hands-on at the depot and 4 hours academical, consequently coming out at the intermediate level with a associate's degree. So my question is, how do we get these programs back initiated into the workforce at CCAD so you can have more proficient, educated employee that will be able to repair and overhaul these programs?
So I'll just kick it off, being from CCAD. You know, the commander, Colonel Atkins, has given us some pretty, as I indicated earlier, some pretty aggressive timelines to develop our strategy. We have, I am aware of some of the programs that you talked about. They were here when I first came on board about 10 years ago. We are looking at some options to partner with universities, some apprenticeships within the depot. We're just on the ground floor of getting started with all that as we develop our strategy. And I'll defer to some of the other folks that may have some knowledge on some of those programs in the past. As you know, DoD has transitioned over time. Some of those programs have been superseded by Pathways intern programs that we have a lot of in the depot, and we leverage quite a bit of. But we are looking at some of those programs today to see if we can use and capitalize on those in the future.
Tom, working with Del Mar, we established those A&P classes, and we selected some of the folks, and they worked at engines for a few weeks. Then they went to airframes, and the ones that were airframes came back to engines, and then they took a test to Del Mar, and they got their A&P license. But they were not full-fledged A&Ps because they did not work in everything that an A&P works. But they did have a certificate to go by and working on that. But we did it for a short time. We needed a lot of the people at the production stage, and we let go of the training deal so they could be producers at that time. And the co-op program was also a program that we had established, but it also went short of funds, and so we didn't continue with it. But those were programs that we had, and they've been very important. We also had a program in the 90s with A&M, and they would train our managers. The managers went through we had a curriculum, and managers went in there, and they got a certificate also going through A&M and getting a management certificate.
So a comment. The devil's always in the details. And those programs, what I see successfully in the aerospace industry going on is the advantage to the community colleges and the tech schools is they're pretty darn flexible in what they can adapt their curriculum. Four-year institutions are less adaptable because they have to go through ABET accreditation. And so what CCAD needs to do is intuitively, the power of your partners need to know what are your skill gaps you need, and they can adapt that over time. Here's the challenge in the 21st century. We have to be very careful of not fixing yesterday's problems. We have to fix today and tomorrow's problems and leverage historical reference. You can come out of the FAA now with an A&P license, and you can demonstrate dope and fabric capability, but you don't necessarily have to demonstrate propensity in composite materials. And so what is happening in the industry right now? Delta Airlines, Boeing, Northrop Grumman have internal training programs so that when little Johnny or little Jill comes out with their brand new A&P license, they can be functional in the workforce, because unless we go back to repairing Stearmans, General Riggs flew one of those, I think, where are the technical gaps in the skill sets we need? And that becomes a partnering challenge and a partnering opportunity to build that workforce. And then the other thing is the gentleman on the end that started working in 1967, how do we pick his brain, or the folks that are 55 years old? Knowledge management in a data-centric world is a unsung thing, is how do we pick the brains of these guys and gals as they leave, so that the 30-year-old can pick up the pace when they retire and we give them their retirement pension. So it requires a constant dialogue, and it's got to be intuitive at the commander level, and they have to be intuitive in what your gap analysis is. And it can't be once in a while, quarterly allotment meetings. It's got to be almost a daily dialogue to sustain the force. Because you are in competition with the growing aerospace industry, the petroleum industry, the other kind of industries. And we have some very, very smart kids, but they're just not aware of what skills they need to be able to sustain CCAD as a strategic warfighting enabler.
General, can I add one comment to that?
Absolutely.
In fact, what's always very interesting is you can put a picture on a billboard, but what you really need is poster children. And what I mean by that is when you do get someone that goes through that program, if it's an apprenticeship program, if it's a SCIP program, if it's a pathways program, and they come out and then they go and tell their two friends, I have a job now and I'm making really good money, and their families all talk about it, and it creates this snowball within the community. Then all of a sudden the educators and everybody want to know, why did they get that program and I didn't? And that's where the strategic partnerships come in, that we can stand there and say, yes, we helped them get it, and we can help you get one too. So whatever that ISD is, whatever that program is, we have to start somewhere and create some kind of momentum. I know a few years ago we did a pathways program. What was very interesting, and this is a very short story, I started with 300 applications. I had them leave and come back with a 7-panel drug test. Only 100 of them came back. Out of the 100, we whittled it down to a pool of 25, and then 12 got hired. And so what is the attrition rate from 300 down to 12? It's very small. But if that's the pool that we need to work with our strategic partners, then that's the work that we'll do so that we create a good workforce.
So we've had a lot of conversation. It's very interesting. We had the reality check conversation a moment ago to lead into this. So sometimes I think we all need a reality check, right? Because we're trying to go after a younger workforce. You've talked about the skill sets they need to come after, but we are dealing with a different generation. And let's face it, in government or OEM, we're very traditionally modeled. We're very traditional bureaucracy. and trying to attract that talent is a challenge. So for those of you leaders in the community who help us go after this, what are your thoughts on to help us get there? Knowing we kind of have to meet in the middle on that reality check almost on getting folks over to bring that talent in more. Secondarily to this question is also we see a lot of talent that almost doesn't go to college. They're in these incubators, accelerators, the innovation centers, and you go find these young kids, you can give them a problem that we spend months on, and within a week, they've developed a solution analytically or otherwise. And what is there out in the community that's helping that young talent that does not want to go into an OEM, does not want to go into a government model, connect to us to be able to sell that talent through other mechanisms?
As you're thinking of the answer to that, add on to the fact that the Army right now is going through a complete relook at its personnel system, and it says we can't continue to hire the way we've hired in the past. People aren't going to do that. You're going to have to pay more for certain skill sets than you necessarily pay by grade or rank as we do today. So that's all going to change. And what I haven't heard from the panel that goes back to this is you're talking about 4-year or trade school kinds of degrees. And I believe in all the reading I'm doing, it says that people are going to start high school, and before they graduate from college, they will have to find a different job because what they've been going to school for is not going to be there. So the old 4-year, 2-year model is not going to work. It's going to have to be, what do you have to train somebody to do? How does the workforce now pick up continuing education, and how do they team and partner? And how do you continue to grow that individual and maneuver them around as their skill sets that they require change? So now I'm dying to hear you say that.
So Colonel Atkins and I talked about this briefly when I introduced myself to her. And she's got a tough job at a very pivotal time. And between General Martin, General Riggs, and Howard, we've known most of the last CCAD commanders for the last 30 plus years. And you're at a very pivotal position. And one of the things we talked about at the strategic level is OPM is not updating position descriptions fast enough for you to hire the right skill sets. And so he might be the most eminently qualified, but you may get me, I'm dumber than a bag of rocks because I meet the PD requirements. And so we got to start changing at the strategic level and also the tactical level. Government service is very structured, which is a good thing. We support the nation in war and peace. And most of our employees have to be vetted. And so when you take the number of trainable populations, you now decrease it by a certain percentage because you've got to have potentially to get credentials. You don't want anybody with shady backgrounds, and so you decrease your population. The other part of that it gets into is you might want to hire a computer scientist because you say, I need a cyber person. Well, if you don't understand the curriculum, I could have graduated magna cum laude with a computer science degree from most universities, but I know little or nothing about coding and forensics, and yet you need a coder or a forensics person on your IT system. And so there's this devil's in the details 21st century deal we need, and the power of CCAD, whether it's a 5-axis milling machine, whether we're starting to fuse composite materials using welding techniques we've done with high alloys in the past. How do you do that? The challenge of the 40% shortage in advanced manufacturing in the aerospace industry around the country means that the U.S. government, in my opinion, and the local Corpus Christi community has got to do some investment in sweat equity. You got to tailor the programs. Trident Technical College in Charleston, South Carolina. Boeing has pumped millions of dollars into creating Trident Technical College because Boeing could not have enough workforce to meet the needs of building the Dreamliner. And so it's good return on their money. They pump money in and they get guys and gals coming out. That's kind of that relationship that we've got to continue going forward. It touches on what you said and what Steve said. And the folks on this panel and the other folks need to be your battle buddies going forward. And the challenge we have in the military is we think we tend to know all the answers because we're structured in the military environment. In a software-defined world, in a software-defined economy, in the Internet of Things world, we have to have partners to be able to be successful. And the workforce is the key enabler, your people. and partners is your strategic partner. And that's a long-winded answer to the question, and I'll sit up here all day long to talk about it because it is the critical node in supporting the warfighter downrange.
To Mark, to your question, and I'll just talk for what I know about the Coastal Bend community. I've been doing workforce development. Yes, it's not sexy, but it is really important. And I've been in this industry for 18 years, and I can tell you, in the Coastal Bend community specifically, we have partnerships. We're not just sitting up here talking about partnerships that in theory would be great. I mean, Dan and Del Mar College, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, our ISDs, we are all in the education and workforce development. We are partners, and we are walking in lockstep with each other. We're recognizing through the leadership of TEA and the Higher Education Coordinating Board and Texas Workforce Commission coming together and acknowledging the needs of employers, we are now in lockstep with what the needs of our employers are in in the future economy. And we want to meet the needs of those employers, but we recognize that technology is changing faster than we know what to do with it. And so getting the stackable credentials, and I'm going to talk I'm not going to talk about it because it's not my thing, it's your thing. But stackable credential models, and this is why it's so important to have employers at the table with us, and that is if there's any issue with our partnerships, it's that we can all get in a room together. We can have the mayor and the chamber representatives and education in the room, but employers are few and far between. And even with chamber representatives in the room, it's not the voice of the employer. And so we need those employer voices so that community colleges and universities can adjust their programs. And so my message for you and any of the other employers that are out here, or as you talk to employers, is that they've got to get in the room with us so that we can make that adaptable curriculum that builds the skill sets that are needed by employers, and then adapt. I mean, Del Mar has done a great job at adapting their curriculum to what a specific employer needs. And so that's just got to continue to work together. We've got to continue to work together to make that future grow.
This can go on for some time. I'm sorry. Please, Mr. Corse.
Let me just address one last question there for Mark. One is, what's interesting is we don't just plant seeds with students. We plant seeds with administrators and parents all the time. The question is trying to get the whole group in the room to realize the opportunities that's in front of them. In fact, I'll echo General Eisner's approach about tactical versus strategic. In this environment, especially when you have multi-billion-dollar petrochemical companies, when they want to compete, they turn on a dime. And whenever one group says, "Hey, I'm paying $27.50," the other group within a day will say, "I'm now paying $29.50, and I'm throwing in 2 more days of vacation." And if you cannot be tactical in your approaches, you will be left behind, because these companies, they know the competitive environment that they're in. And in fact, it's not just us, it's them planting seeds. They are in the ISDs, they're in the school districts, they're at PTA meetings, they're everywhere planting seeds all the time. And to compete in that environment, that's the level of investment that we all have to make. I hope that helps.
Can I get a round of applause for this panel? Les, thank you very, very much for you and the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not stop asking questions. If you would join us for the social next door, sometimes I find that if you have a drink of some kind, I'm not saying alcohol, but if you have a drink of some kind, the conversation will flow a little better. So anyway, I want to thank once again, the City of Corpus Christi and South Texas Military Facilities Task Force, because they're sponsoring the social. And we will go out, and I hope that you enjoy your evening. Please be safe. We will see you right back here tomorrow morning at 0800 for coffee and pastries in the exhibit hall, and we will start promptly at 8:55. I would also ask each of the panels or folks that were here today, if you had a tent card of some type and you are not going to be here, will you please let the folks at the desk know that you're not going to be back tomorrow? Because what I'd like to do is be able to move people up closer, because this is like going to a backbench Baptist Church, and I'm going to start passing a collection plate back there because I'm looking for scholarship money. So if I can do that, I'd really appreciate it. But seriously, thank you very much. I think we've had a wonderful day and a great panel. Thank you.